The Council's betrayal. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The greatest rulers of the galaxy sat around a massive circular table, their faces grim. The air was heavy with tension. Supreme Chancellor Vrax, leader of the Council, looked at the gathered alien leaders. His deep red eyes burned with hatred. "Humanity has grown too powerful," he said. "If we allow them to continue, they will challenge our rule." The other council members murmured in agreement. Once, humanity had been weak. A young race, barely stepping into the stars. But now, they had colonies, fleets, weapons. Worse, they had ideas. Freedom, rebellion, independence. Dangerous ideas. "We gave them a place in the stars," said Lord Xivan, his voice filled with disgust. "And now, they refuse to obey." Chancellor Vrax slammed his fist on the table. "Then we must crush them before it is too late." The decision was made. The Council would betray humanity. The attack came without warning. Human colonies along the outer rim burned as massive alien fleets descended upon them. Entire cities were turned to ash. Billions of lives were lost in a single night. Earth's communication lines went dark. The Council's warships surrounded the Sol system, cutting off humanity's homeworld. On Mars, Admiral Elias Keller watched in horror as reports flooded in. "They're wiping us out," his second-in-command, Commander Ramirez, said. "No negotiations, no mercy." Keller clenched his fists. He had trusted the Council once, believed in peace, but now he saw the truth. The Council never wanted peace. They wanted control. And when humanity refused to bow, they chose to destroy them. A message came through from the last human fleet still standing. "Admiral, we're surrounded. We can't hold them off." Keller's heart pounded. He could order them to fight, but it would be a slaughter. Humanity wasn't ready for a war like this. Not yet. His mind raced. If they fought now, they would lose everything. But if they disappeared, if they vanished into the darkness of space, they could regroup. They could strike back. Keller made his decision. Send the order. All remaining human forces, disappear. Across the galaxy, human ships powered down their distress beacons, shut off their signals, and melted into the void. To the Council, it looked like victory. But they had made a mistake. They thought humanity was broken. They didn't realize that the hunt had just begun. The Galactic Council believed they had won. Across the stars, their fleets patrolled the ruins of human colonies. Their soldiers walked through the ashes of once thriving cities, declaring victory. The Council broadcasted their success across the galaxy. Humanity is no more. The threat is gone. But something was wrong. Council warships sent to clear the last human survivors began to disappear. Entire fleets gone without a trace. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just silence. Captain Tovak of the Xyrix Empire sat in the command chair of the Warblade, a Council battleship patrolling the outer edges of former human space. His orders were simple: search for any surviving human forces and destroy them. But as they drifted through the remains of a shattered human colony, something felt off. "Commander," a bridge officer said, eyes wide with fear. "We're detecting something. Movement in the debris field." Tovak frowned. "Show me." On the screen, the wreckage of human ships floated lifelessly in space, but something moved within the shadows. It was quick, almost impossible to see. Then the lights flickered. The ship's systems glitched. Weapons went offline. "Status report," Tovak barked. "Sir, something is inside the ship," the officer shouted. Screams echoed through the comms. Security teams reported gunfire. Then silence. One by one, the bridge crew's screens went dark. The ship's artificial gravity shut off, and red emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the command deck. Then a voice came over the comms. "Cold. Human. Now you know how it feels." The lights flickered once more, and then Warblade was gone. Vanished. The Council was confused. One missing patrol ship was nothing. 2. A coincidence. But then came the distress signals. Reports of shadowy figures boarding ships. Soldiers found dead in their own bunkers. Entire space stations reduced to silent graveyards. Panic spread. In the High Council chamber, Supreme Chancellor Vrax slammed his claws on the table. We wiped them out. How can they still be fighting? No one had an answer. But across the galaxy, whispers spread. Survivors of human attacks, those lucky enough to escape, spoke of ghosts, shadows that came from nowhere, silent killers that left nothing but terror behind. The hunters had become the hunted. And the Galactic Council was starting to realize they had made a mistake. The Galactic Council was no longer laughing. What had started as a few missing patrols had turned into a nightmare. Entire fleets had vanished, bases left abandoned with no sign of struggle. Fear spread like wildfire. Council leaders demanded answers, but no one had any. The humans were supposed to be defeated. Their worlds were supposed to be burning. And yet, they were out there. Somewhere. Admiral Krovek of the Zorvax Dominion stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, the Iron Fist. He was one of the Council's finest tacticians, a veteran of countless battles. He had personally led the destruction of 3 human colonies. To him, humans were pests, weak, emotional, and predictable. He had expected them to fight back, to throw themselves at the Council in one final desperate act of defiance. Instead, they had disappeared. That was what unsettled him the most. "Admiral," one of his officers called out, "we have received a distress signal from the Crimson Lance. They were patrolling the Kalos sector." Krovak's mandibles clicked in annoyance. That was the 3rd ship this week. Play the message. The bridge fell silent as the transmission played. At first, it was nothing but static. Then came heavy breathing, ragged and panicked. "They're here," the voice whispered. "They're inside. We never saw them coming." They. A loud crash cut the message short, followed by the sound of gunfire. Screams. Then silence. The transmission ended. A cold dread settled over the bridge crew. No explosion, no final words. Just silence. Krovek's claws tightened into fists. "Recall all patrols from human space. We will regroup at the primary defense line. If the humans wish to play games, we will force them into open battle." Across the galaxy, similar orders were given. The Council's fleets, once spread across hundreds of systems, now pulled back to defend key worlds. They were done searching. Now, they would prepare. But the humans had no intention of attacking these well-defended strongholds. They had learned. They had adapted. And they were still hunting. In the darkness of space, human warships drifted silently, hidden by advanced stealth technology. Unlike the massive Council armadas, these ships did not travel in large fleets. They moved in small, deadly packs. Strike teams slipped onto enemy ships, disabling systems, assassinating officers, and vanishing before alarms could sound. They did not seek glory. They did not seek prisoners. They sought revenge. On a distant Council outpost, General Turl stood in his war room, analyzing the latest reports. His forces were stationed on Arathis 5, a heavily fortified moon with orbital defenses and an elite garrison. If the humans dared attack, they would be slaughtered. But then the power flickered, just for a second. Turl frowned. "Check the grid. That shouldn't be happening." A technician hurried to respond, his fingers moving over the console. "Sir, the power core is stable. It must be a minor fluctuation." Turl did not believe in coincidences. His claws tapped against the metal table. "Double the patrols. Lock down all hangars. Nothing gets in or out without my authorization." His officers obeyed. Security was tightened, guards stationed at every critical location. No enemy could breach Arathis 5 without an entire fleet. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Turl allowed himself to relax. Maybe it was just his paranoia. Maybe the humans had truly been broken. And this was all just. The lights went out. Emergency sirens blared. Red warning lights flashed across the command center. "Report." Turl barked. "Sir, security feeds are down. We've lost contact with outpost sectors 7 through 12. Turl's blood ran cold. Impossible. Who's attacking us? The answer came in the form of a transmission that echoed through every speaker on the moon. A single human voice. Calm. Cold. You killed our people. Burned our worlds. Now, it's your turn. Then the screams began. Across Arathis 5, human strike teams emerged from the darkness. They moved like shadows, cutting through defenses with terrifying precision. By the time the council soldiers knew what was happening, it was already too late. Turl grabbed his rifle, leading his personal guard toward the control center. If he could just get a signal out, call for reinforcements. A shadow moved in the hallway. Gunfire erupted, but the enemy was already gone. His guards fell one by one, taken down by unseen attackers. Turl ran, desperation setting in. He turned a corner and came face to face with a human soldier. The last thing Turl saw was cold, merciless eyes before everything went dark. When the council finally sent reinforcements to Arathis 5, they found nothing but silence. Every soldier was dead, every system destroyed. And scrawled in blood on the walls of the command center, a single message. You are not the hunters, you are the prey. The Galactic Council had wanted war. Now they had it. The Galactic Council was unraveling. Arathis 5 had been one of their most secure military outposts, yet it had fallen without warning, without survivors. There was no fleet invasion, no massive battle, only silence followed by slaughter. The message left behind haunted every council member. You are not the hunters. You are the prey. The attacks were spreading. Key supply lines were cut, fuel stations sabotaged, high-ranking officials assassinated in their own chambers. Entire colonies woke up to find their defenses disabled and their leaders missing. Fear gripped every council world. But Supreme Chancellor Vrax refused to believe they were losing. They are terrorists. He roared in the High Council chamber. Cowards hiding in the shadows. We are the masters of this galaxy. Humanity should have been extinct. Lord Sivan, his reptilian features tense with fear, leaned forward. And yet, they are still here. Tell me, Chancellor, where is Admiral Krovek's fleet? Silence. The Council had lost contact with Krovek's fleet days ago. A force of 300 warships gone. No distress signals. No wreckage. Just gone. Vrax's claws tightened. We will crush them. Lord Sivan scoffed. Crush what? There is no enemy fleet to face in open battle. They are ghosts striking from the dark and disappearing before we can respond. We need tow. The chamber doors burst open. A security officer rushed inside, panic on his face. Chancellor, we just received a transmission from the Zorvax homeworld. The humans, they attacked. The chamber fell silent. Vrax's voice was barely a whisper. Show me. The holographic screen flickered to life, showing shaky footage from the Zorvax capital. Explosions rocked the skyline, smoke rising from the Council's military headquarters. Zorvax soldiers fired wildly into the streets, but there was no visible enemy. Then shadows moved. Humans, dressed in black combat gear, emerged from the smoke, weapons firing with deadly precision. The Zorvax forces fell one by one, their best warriors unable to stop the storm. The transmission cut to the interior of the ruling palace. A squad of humans breached the gates, cutting through the guards like they were nothing. The final image sent terror through the council. Chancellor Zorak, the highest-ranking leader of the Zorvax Dominion, was on his knees. A human soldier stood behind him, blade pressed against his throat. The Zorvax leader opened his mouth to beg. The screen cut to black. The chamber was deathly quiet. Then the transmission restarted, playing a new message. A deep, calm voice spoke. You took everything from us. Now, we take everything from you. The council was paralyzed. This wasn't just revenge. It was extermination. Vrax gritted his teeth. Enough. He turned to his generals. Deploy every available fleet. Every soldier, every warship. If we cannot hunt them, we will burn them out. Lord Sivan's voice was cold. And what if we can't? Vrax's eyes burned with rage. Then we die fighting. Across the galaxy, council forces prepared for war. But deep in the void, humanity watched and waited. The Galactic Council had started this war. Now, they would suffer until the last of them was nothing but dust. The Galactic Council's war machine roared to life. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon was mobilized. The Council's leaders had no choice. They were no longer ruling an empire. They were fighting for survival. Admiral Jorak of the Valkyrie Dominion stood on the bridge of the Dreadmaw, leading a battle group of 500 warships. His mission was clear: hunt the humans, burn their hiding places, and reclaim order in the galaxy. He believed in numbers, in overwhelming firepower, in discipline. But all of that meant nothing when facing an enemy that refused to fight the way they were supposed to. The first attack came when his fleet arrived at a former human colony, Epsilon Prime. It was supposed to be abandoned, just another dead world left in ruins after the initial extermination. Yet as soon as his warships entered orbit, something felt wrong. Admiral, one of his officers called. Long-range scanners are detecting debris. Jorak frowned. What kind of debris? The officer hesitated. It's moving. Before Jorak could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. From the darkness of space, missiles ignited, engines flaring to life. They weren't coming from warships. They were hidden in the debris field, scattered across the system, waiting like a minefield for their prey to arrive. Jorak barely had time to react. The first wave of missiles struck, tearing through his frontline ships. Explosions rippled through the fleet as hulls shattered, sending flaming wreckage spiraling into the void. Ships broke apart like glass, their crews never even getting a chance to fight back. Shields up, Jorak roared. Find where those missiles came from. But there were no enemy ships in sight, no obvious attackers, just wreckage, silence, and death. Then, the second wave came. Stealth fighters emerged from the debris field like ghosts, darting between the burning remains of Jorak's fleet. Their weapons were precise, targeting engines, shield generators, command centers. They didn't waste firepower. Every shot was a kill. Where is the enemy fleet? Jorak shouted, gripping his command chair. The truth was sinking in. There was no enemy fleet, not in the way the Council understood. The humans had no grand armadas, no battle formations. They had become something worse, a swarm of predators, striking in the dark and vanishing before they could be stopped. Within minutes, a fleet of 500 warships had been reduced to a graveyard. The Dreadmaw was one of the last ships standing, its engines failing, its weapons useless. Jorak stood in stunned silence, watching as his proud fleet was erased from existence. Then his screen flickered. A transmission was coming through. A human face appeared. Not a soldier, not a general. Just a man in a dark uniform, his expression unreadable. You burned our homes, he said quietly. We are here to return the favor. Jorak opened his mouth to respond. The transmission cut. And then the Dreadmaw exploded. The loss of Jorak's fleet sent shockwaves through the Council. The Council had spent years believing in their superiority, their control over the galaxy. Now all of that was crumbling. Humanity had no central government, no homeworld, no visible leader. Yet they were winning. Fear spread. Council leaders no longer slept in their palaces. They moved from hidden bunkers to warships, never staying in one place for too long. They knew they were being hunted. On the planet Xerathis 9, a council stronghold, High General Orvac had personally taken command of planetary defenses. The world was a fortress, armed with anti-orbital cannons, shield arrays, and a standing army of millions. If the humans dared attack, they would be destroyed. Or so he thought. The first sign of trouble came when the orbital defense grid flickered. It was only for a second, barely noticeable, but it sent a wave of unease through the command center. Then, an explosion rocked the eastern city sector, then another, and another. Within minutes, massive fires engulfed the planet's military districts. Fuel depots detonated, war factories collapsed, and power grids failed one by one. It was not a battle. It was a carefully executed extermination. The humans had infiltrated the planet. Orvek, in full battle armor, stood at the heart of the command center, shouting orders. Deploy all forces. Lock down the capital. Do not let them reach the inner. A deafening boom shook the room. The blast doors, reinforced with layers of durasteel, were torn open like paper. And from the smoke, they came. Black-armored human soldiers, weapons raised. They moved with terrifying precision, cutting down the Council's best warriors in seconds. Orvek fought. He had to fight. His rifle roared, cutting down two humans. He reached for his blade, charging forward, roaring with fury. A gunshot echoed through the chamber. Orvek stopped. He looked down. A bullet hole was burning in his chest. His legs gave out. The world spun. As he collapsed, he saw one of the humans standing over him. A soldier with no insignia, no markings, just cold, focused eyes. "Tell your council," the human said, voice emotionless. "This is just the beginning." Darkness took Orvek. When the council finally received word from Sirius 9, the planet was already lost. Their fortress world, gone in a single night. There was no battle. No war, only silence, then fire. And now, the council was beginning to understand. They had betrayed humanity. Now, humanity was making sure they never forgot. The council was running out of time. Every fortress they built was burned. Every fleet they sent was torn apart. Every leader they tried to protect was hunted down. It no longer felt like war. It felt like punishment. Across the galaxy, fear spread like a plague. Once mighty rulers now hid in underground bunkers, terrified to even sleep. Soldiers whispered of ghosts, of human warriors who could not be stopped, who came and went like shadows in the night. The council had spent years believing humans were weak, insignificant. Now, they were learning the truth. Humanity was relentless. Humanity was patient. And worst of all, humanity did not forgive. Supreme Chancellor Vrax sat in his war room, staring at the latest reports. His scaled hands trembled as he read the casualty numbers. Billions dead. Entire fleets erased. Stronghold planets turned to lifeless husks. His advisors were panicking. "We cannot keep fighting like this," Lord Xivan shouted. His reptilian eyes darted nervously. "We don't even know where they are. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't exist?" Vrax's claws dug into the metal table. "We need to set a trap." General Velok, the only warrior left in the room who still looked composed, stepped forward. "What do you propose, Chancellor?" Vrax's eyes burned with desperation. "We know humans hate us. We know they want us dead. That means they will come for me. We will use that." The plan was simple. Spread false intelligence that the Supreme Chancellor would be moving to the fortified world of Kelrath 4. The planet was heavily defended, its skies patrolled by thousands of warships. If the humans tried to strike, they would be walking into a slaughter. It was a perfect trap. Or so they thought. The bait had been set. Kelrath 4 was on full alert. Its cities were locked down. Orbital cannons, planetary shields, and elite council soldiers stood ready. The council had never been more prepared for an attack. And yet, the humans never came. Days passed, then a week. Not a single shot was fired. Then, something worse happened. A single message was broadcast across every council world, on every screen, every device. The same voice that had haunted them for months spoke again. We knew it was a trap. Vrax's blood turned to ice. The transmission changed. It was live footage. Not of Kelrath 4. Not of the battle they had planned for. It was the homeworld of the Supreme Chancellor himself, the beating heart of the Council. And it was burning. Explosions rocked the capital. Smoke and fire consumed the sky. The once great city of Zorvax's Prime was falling apart. The Council's greatest stronghold, the very center of their rule, was under attack, and there was nothing they could do. Hundreds of human strike teams had infiltrated the planet. They hadn't come with an army. They hadn't arrived in massive war fleets. They had already been there, hiding, waiting for the perfect moment. The defenses that should have protected the city had been disabled from the inside. Now the hunters had come to finish their work. The video feed cut to the Council Palace, where explosions tore through its mighty towers. Guards fought desperately, but the enemy was everywhere. Then the doors of the throne room burst open, and they arrived. A group of human operatives, weapons raised, stormed inside. Vrax recognized the one in front. The same man who had spoken in the previous transmissions. His uniform had no rank, no insignia. His face was calm, emotionless. The Supreme Chancellor finally felt true fear. "You?" Vrax whispered. The human tilted his head. "You thought we would fight your war." He took a step forward. "You thought we would attack your fleets, face you in open battle." He raised his weapon. "But we are not like you." Vrax's breath caught in his throat. "You betrayed us," the human said. "Destroyed our worlds. Killed our families. You thought you won." His finger tightened on the trigger. "You were wrong." A single gunshot echoed through the chamber. The Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council was dead. By the time the Council's remaining leaders realized what had happened, it was already too late. Their great capital had fallen. Their armies were in disarray. Their fleets were leaderless. And the humans had not conquered them. They had erased them. One by one, Council-controlled worlds began to surrender. Some races fled into the void, hoping to escape. Others begged for mercy. But humanity had no mercy left to give. They had been betrayed. Now, they were here to finish what the Council had started. The war was over. Or at least, that's what the galaxy believed. The Supreme Chancellor was dead. The Council was in ruins. Their fleets were shattered. Their fortresses burned. Entire civilizations that had once ruled with arrogance were now begging for mercy. Some surrendered without a fight. Others tried to flee into the void, hoping to escape humanity's wrath. But there was nowhere left to run. The hunters had not come for conquest. They had come for justice, for revenge. And they would not stop until every last traitor paid the price. On the remains of the Council's homeworld, Zorvax's Prime, the sky was thick with smoke. The mighty capital, once the beating heart of a galactic empire, was now a graveyard of fire and ruin. And at its center, standing on the broken steps of the Grand Palace, was a lone human operative. The same man who had delivered humanity's message of war. He stood in silence, watching as his people moved through the wreckage. The last remnants of the Council's forces had already been dealt with. The battle had been swift, brutal, just like all the others. A voice crackled in his earpiece. "We found them." The operative turned. In the ruins of a collapsed building, a group of alien figures were being dragged into the open. The last surviving members of the Galactic Council. Once, they had ruled with power and cruelty. Once, they had signed humanity's death warrant, believing it would be nothing more than a footnote in history. Now, they were nothing. Broken, beaten, trembling before those they had wronged. The operative stepped forward. He did not shout. He did not gloat. He simply looked at them. And they knew. They knew what was coming. One of the surviving counselors, a frail insectoid, fell to his knees. "Please," he choked out. "Mercy." The operative tilted his head. "Mercy," he repeated. For a long moment, there was silence. The only sound was the crackling of fire, the distant echoes of a fallen civilization. Then the operative spoke. "You never showed us mercy." A single gunshot echoed through the ruins. Then another, and another, until the last of the council was no more. The galaxy was forever changed. For thousands of years, the council had ruled with arrogance, believing themselves untouchable. They had wiped out species without hesitation, crushed entire civilizations without a second thought, and they had believed humanity would be no different. But they had made a mistake that cost them everything. Now, their empire was gone. Their legacy was reduced to dust. And humanity was still here. Not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as a warning to any who might think to betray them again. Because in the dark corners of space, where whispers of terror still spread, one truth remained. A truth carved into the ruins of a fallen empire. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. The hunt was over, and humanity had won.